What we were discussing in chapter 48 is how much God loves me. Now, we've been discussing this since chapter 46, but in 46 and 47, we were looking more at, as we experience things in this world, what God does for me that shows me how much he loves me. So we saw this in terms of the broad strokes of God going into Egypt to take the Jewish people out. We discussed this in terms of our own reality and looking at our own life and seeing God's love and kindness and winks and hugs and caring us. And every time we notice God's caring and kind and compassion and love, we feel loved and we love. Now we're looking at it cosmically, meaning creation. If you think about it, all of creation is an expression of God's love for us. Because throughout all of creation, what God is doing is squashing himself, putting himself on the side, constricting himself, concealing himself, so that there can be a space that we can be. So this shows us like the imprint of creation. The prototype of creation is God putting himself on the side for love of us. And that's what we're in the middle of discussing in chapter 48. We are on page Samaches. God takes up all space, but yet he minimizes self so there could be room for us. So even though God is within all of creation, he doesn't reveal himself. We said that was a definition of soivev, God's encompassing energies. What does it mean encompassing? There's nothing spatial by God. It means expression of self where self is not revealed. Self seems distant. That's soivev. That's the encompassing energies. Again, not that they're anywhere spatially any different than any other energies, but that they seem to be far from us because God's not revealing self in soivev. Why? Because that would be so overwhelming, there wouldn't be the reality of creation. So for love of us, let's get a creation in place. And to get that creation in place, let's make God's self not revealed, so there can be room for else, for something else, which is creation, which is ultimately physicality, ultimately planet Earth, and a Jew, a physical being, a human being, godly soul within a physical body who can freely choose to serve God. So nevertheless, even though he's within everything, he's not clearly, fully expressed. It's not a revelation of his presence. Only a very small amount of vitality. As if the aspect of the inanimate and the vegetation, only on that level. And therefore, all of this level of God's reality is called encompassing light, even though it's completely within every fiber, being, molecule, cell aspect of creation. So it's not at all distant or remote, or for that matter, encompassing. What we're saying is not true. We call the light encompassing, and it's not encompassing, it's within. But we're calling it encompassing to connote the distance. And the distance, that sense of distance, is attained by the enormous, enormous constrictions on the light. And why do we have to constrict the light, which is God's self, his energies? Why does he have to constrict himself so much? Because otherwise we could never be. So for love of us, he's doing this. So why are we calling it encompassing when it's not encompassing? Because the flow, the energy, what he's giving is not revealed in it. Yoser, more. He's only giving in a manner of concealment, very, very discreetly, very constricted, very concealed. So any flow, any giving energy which is concealed, we call encompassing. So whenever you see in Kabbalistic or Hasidic thought the term encompassing energies, no, because this is true always, it's not that those energies are around, but rather those energies are ultra constricted. And why do I say ultra constricted? Because all of God's energies are constricted. The energy that's within is also mega constricted. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be able to be. In other words, we have these two dimensions of God's energies, as we've been discussing. the energy that we call within and the energy that we call around. They're all within, and they're both very, very constricted. Because even the smaller energy, the within energy, if we really experienced it, it would completely blow us away, and we also wouldn't be. So they're both very constricted. But the encompassing energy is much, much more constricted because its power is so much greater. The within energy has already been constricted enough that its power is not as great, and therefore we can handle it in a bit bigger doses. But the encompassing energies, its energies are so powerful, and therefore they have to be so constricted, so in no way we really experience them, because if we did, we would lose our existence. And God loves us way, way, way too much for that to happen. Because, now here the Alter Rebbe uses Kabbalistic terms. The Alter Rebbe is using the terms called Alma de Iskasia, the worlds of concealment, and Alma de Iskalia, the worlds of revelation. The worlds of concealment means much upper, higher, more powerful worlds, and Alma de Iskalia means lower worlds. But that's not the translation. Alma de Iskasia means concealed. Alma de Iskalia means revealed. So again, we're seeing the same concept. Alma de Iskasia, much more powerful, therefore called the concealed worlds, because the energy is very concealed, because it's so powerful. Alma de Iskalia, more limited energy, therefore called the revealed world, because relatively speaking, that energy is revealed, we can handle it, and creation can still be. So this concept, Alma de Iskasia, concealed, very powerful, and therefore very concealed. Alma de Iskalia, revealed, because not as powerful, and therefore can be revealed. This is mirroring what we're saying here about within creation itself. Alma de Iskasia and Alma de Iskalia are levels of creation. The upper worlds are called the concealed worlds, the lower worlds are called the revealed worlds. But within every fiber of creation, the highest worlds and the lowest worlds, a pen, and beyond the world of being, the world of Atzilus, within every dimension of anything called creation is the Makif, Sovev, and Memale, the encompassing lights and the within lights. Everything has both. And in everything, the highest godliness, the highest celestial beings, that encompassing lights are encompassing, which means they're concealed. Because the highest spiritual energies would not be able to handle them and exist. So they're concealed throughout all of creation. All of creation can't handle them. All of creation can't handle them the same way. They relate to all of creation the same way, and they relate, as we're saying, from a distance, meaning very concealed. The within lights are also found on every single level of creation, but they're found differently on every level of creation because they are revealed, relatively speaking. And since they're revealed, more of those lights can be shining within celestial beings than can be shining within this pen. So of course there's a concealment on the within lights as well, but it's much less concealment because those lights are tapered to the creation they are vivifying. So therefore those lights can be, so to speak, revealed within this pen, and it doesn't blow away the existence of the pen. The pen can handle them because God is making those lights as per the accessibility, the receptivity of a pen to exist as a pen while receiving those lights. So the encompassing lights are the same throughout creation. They're on every level of creation, and they're concealed from all levels of creation. And the within lights are, relatively speaking, revealed and are, as I'm saying, tapered, matched, measured to each creation it's vivifying to be able to be revealed. So that concept, encompassing lights and within lights, the Rebbe is here making a parallel image, the worlds of concealment, the worlds of revelation. What do I gain from that? Why did I bring that in? Because we see here the same concept, that something very powerful is called concealed, because it is concealed, because that's the only way creation can handle such powerful energy. And now, the Rebbe is going to give us a metaphor to make all this a little more accessible to our brain. So to make this more accessible to our understanding, the Rebbe is now going to make a human storyline, so to speak, something our brain can wrap around naturally, and when we understand that, we could say, oh, and we could apply it to these concepts we're talking about that might be a little more abstract. Kimo ha'adam. So just like a person, okay, that's us, we can relate to a person. Shemetzayer b'da'aso ezer davar shera'o sheroa. That he's envisioning in his, as we call it, mind's eye, something he saw or something he's currently seeing. So in your mind, mentally, you're constructing with tremendous detail something. An apple, a pen, a building, Niagara Falls, something you've seen or are currently seeing. Hine av shekol guf etzem hadavar hu v'gabo v'tocho v'totocho kulo mitzuyer b'daso machshavto. Now, even though that thing that you're envisioning, that you're imagining, that you're thinking about, you are completely sculpting it in your mind. Every aspect, every detail. You are a very visual person. And you are very aware of that thing. Maybe you're looking at it right now and studying it. So you're looking at all the curves of the apple and the shades and the shadows and the coloration or the light bulb or your cell phone, whatever it is. You have completely sculpted it, sketched it, envisioned it, drawn it in your mind's eye. It's completely within your brain, that thing that you're thinking about. Because you either completely saw it or are currently seeing it. So you are very carefully watching. As I said, you are very visual. You are very, very aware. You are very meticulous in your thinking and in your observation, and you are in your mind recreating that thing. Okay, well, we could all understand that. We might not do it, but we could totally understand it. So what will we envision that as? What will we call a person who's doing that? Hine nikres da'aso makefas hadavar hu kulo. Well, we would say that the person's mind is completely surrounding, encompassing that thing in his mind. V'hadavar hu mukaf b'daso machshavto, rak she'enu mukaf b'pol mamish, rak b'dimyo machshavas adam b'daso. So that item is completely gripped by the mind of that person. Now, of course, the Rebbe says it's not literally gripped because the apple or the pen or the vase is sitting on the table. But so to speak, your mind is completely containing that item. Because in your mind's eye, in your imagination, that item is completely, you can close your eye and see it absolutely. If your mind created things, poof, there it would be. You are containing it within your mind. But of course, a person isn't literally containing it because we're just envisioning it. We're just thinking about it. Our thoughts don't create reality, but God's does. God's thoughts create reality. But when we're talking about God, that it says about him, that my thoughts are not your thoughts. Now, God's thoughts are not our thoughts for many reasons. And on many levels, his thoughts are not our thoughts. And this is one of them. So his thoughts, when he's aware of something, when he's, so to speak, proactively thinking about something, that with his thoughts, he's aware, he knows all of creation. He's literally gripping it, and every level and every molecule of its being. In other words, what the Rebbe set up here is a metaphor, parable, to make what we're discussing concrete. So we first started with something very concrete, a human being. And we're saying, you're envisioning this pen. You're looking at it, and in your mind, you are perfectly, every dimension, every aspect, as if you're an artist, and you want to recreate it. In a painting, in pottery, in a sculpture, you want to recreate this pen. So you're analyzing every aspect. If you close your eyes, you see it completely. So you're gripping the pen with your mind, but you're not physically doing anything to the pen because you're just a human being doing this. The Rebbe says, but in essence, that's what God does to every creation. God is gripping the creation with his thoughts of it. Because as God thinks, the thing is. So when God is envisioning this pen, it is. His awareness of it is its existence. L'mashal, for example, Kado ha'aretz halazu. Let's talk about planet Earth, right? The orb of this Earth. Hare yidi'asa yisparach. God's awareness, God's knowledge of it, Makefes kol ovi kador haaretz, is encompassing the entirety of the orb, of the planet of Earth, v'chol asher b'socho, and everything within it, v'totocho, and everything within it, ad tachtiso, until its nth degree. Every single molecule, every single dimension of Earth exists by virtue of God's awareness of it. God is vivifying it by his knowledge of it, by his vision of it. So he's envisioning it to the last detail, because every detail has to be brought to life by his awareness of it. Hakol b'poel mamish. Now by God, unlike by a human, of course, his thinking of it makes it be. So he is, so to speak, of course, we're using very human terminologies because we're humans and that's what makes sense to us. So his conscious thoughts, his conscious awareness, as if in his mind's eye, is the entirety of the planet, in the last blade of grass and the last clump of earth. His awareness of that is holding it, is containing it, and is making it exist, be as exactly as his vision of it, which is sort of amazing if you think of all the beauty, but if you think of all the ugliness, all the good and all the evil, and everything God is aware of, God is seeing, and God is causing to be. Because we work through the trenches, we work through the reality God is envisioning, and God is envisioning tremendous beauty and tremendous ugliness, tremendous evil, to give us the opportunity to transform that evil, overcome that evil, nullify that evil, transcend that evil. But for that to happen, God has to envision it, because his envisioning it makes it be. Because his awareness of it, that is its existence. That is how it is constantly vivified and doesn't revert into absolute nothingness. So here is creation. Creation is, as we're saying, a product of God's thoughts. God is thinking, and his thoughts, of course, which then become his speech, because ultimately it's an expression of speech, but here we're working on the level of thought. He's thinking it into existence. And if he wasn't thinking it, it wouldn't be. And if he was thinking it differently, it would be different. So that item that's bent or smashed or ripped, he's thinking it into existence as an item that is currently, he's envisioning it bent or smashed or ripped. Every single detail exists because his mind's eye is envisioning it as it currently is. As the current reality that we see, this is an extension of God's vision of it. So God is holding everything in his mind's eye, which of course, the point here that we're trying to understand is that's encompassing the object. Like if in my mind's eye, I was envisioning something, I would say my thoughts encompass, contain that item. So God's containing, so to speak, in his, so to speak, thoughts. We're using human terms because we want to understand this a little. He's containing everything in all of creation. Again, not only the pens of the world, not only the blades of grass, the highest angels, the highest supernal realms, every aspect of my soul, everything, which again boggles the mind, because how could he be simultaneously thinking of the pen and of the worlds of tohu and of my soul and of the political arena going on right now in America? Like, how could all of this be constantly being thought of and vivified and contained? We're human. So we reach a certain point where my brain says, I can't handle it. The basic thing we can't handle, if we really try to understand this, is that impossible chasm between finite and infinite. I mean, if we think of it in a very finite way, like God envisioning the totality of every aspect of every molecule, of every dimension, of the feel, of the coloration, of the dimensions of everything of this pen, and therefore the pen being, I mean, yeah, I could envision that. But when I understand it's not just the pen, it's everything on planet Earth. And I understand it's not just everything on planet Earth. It's everything in the entire Milky Way galaxy. And I understand it's not only everything in the entire Milky Way galaxy, it's every spiritual dimension of which this is only the lowest expression of God. And there's, I would call it infinite levels with chambers, with angels, with celestial beings, with energy, and all of that God is envisioning, and it is. Then my mind says, what? How is that? How could he do all of that? How could he simultaneously envision it all into existence? Because I can't really grasp infinite. But if I can think of it in a very finite way, 1 or 2 or 5 or 25 items, and then just say, but God's infinite. So the same way he could do it for one item, he could do it for infinite items. So his awareness of it, his containing it within his thoughts, surrounding it by his mind's vision of it, completely encompassing and containing it in his mind's eye, that makes it be. But the Rebbe says, if it was just that simple, we wouldn't have spent as much time as we've spent till now. Of course, when he's envisioning it, it can't be directly like from his mind's vision, zap to being a pen, or planet Atzilus, or the whole Milky Way galaxy, cosmos, the sun, whatever, because it's much too intense, God's energy. So we have the basic containing it in his thoughts, and then need a tremendous constriction of self, from which can emerge whatever he's at this moment concurrently, because he's doing this to everything constantly all the time, envisioning. But it wouldn't be existent as it is now, something finite, and with a minimal godly life and physical energy, extremely so. I mean, we have things that God's envisioning, that's a pen, that's inanimate, that's a blade of grass, that's vegetation from God's energy. A blade of grass? A pen? I mean, of course, for that matter, a human being. But going all the way to the extreme thing, a pen? God's energy this pen could exist from his thoughts? So, in loyal de tzimtzumim rabim vatzumim, if it's not for enormous, intense constrictions of self, many and very, very, very powerful constrictions of self, shetzimtzemu ha'or v'achayis, that he's so constricted his light, his vitality, shenishlavish b'kador ha'aretz, that was engarbed in the planet Earth, in his vision of planet Earth, which became planet Earth, for it to be as a finite, inanimate / vegetation creation, and only on the level I was thinking of inanimate and vegetation, and yet at the same time, at the same time, it is from his thoughts. So it is his thoughts, and his thoughts are holding it, and his thoughts get ultra constricted. But the fact that they're ultra constricted does not mean it's no longer his thoughts. The only power of existence is God. But if God's empowering something, that thing would be infinite. And God doesn't want it to be infinite. He wants creation. He wants a human being. He wants us able to freely choose to serve him. So it's almost like this quandary. From me comes forth creation. The product is like its source. God is infinite. The product should be infinite. But God doesn't want it to be infinite because he wants us to exist. And by definition, we got to be finite for us to function as human beings in a physical world. So on one hand, all of creation, from the highest celestial dimensions to the lowest physical things of this world. Sorry, give you something else. I could look at a piece of paper. Got bored of my pen. It's all him. It's only him. There's no other building block but him. It's literally his thoughts. But those thoughts, energy became very constricted to create something as finite as a piece of paper. But yet it's his thoughts. And his thoughts are him. And that's like the crazy, unfathomable dichotomy of all of creation, not just a piece of paper. The highest angel. So what? Still creation, still finite. On one hand, that highest angel, that highest celestial realm, or my paper or my pen, is him, is only him, is his thoughts, and his thoughts are him. And yet God managed to so constrict his thoughts that from the infinity of his thoughts, from the intensity of his thoughts, can come out finite. By paper and pen, or the highest angel or spiritual dimension. We sang on one hand, but on the other hand, but on the other hand. So on one hand, all of creation he's thinking into existence. But he made it so small and minimized that something finite comes from the infinity of his thoughts. But that doesn't take away the fact that it is from the infinity of his thoughts. And his thoughts are him. And therefore all of creation ultimately is him. And yet he managed to so squash himself from the infinity of him, from the inner dimension of self, from his thoughts, which is him, comes the most finite levels of creation. Comes any piece of creation, because any and all of creation is finite. The greatest spiritual beings are ultimately finite, but even comes the lowest dimensions of creation. And it's all from his thoughts, and his thoughts are him. And yet it manages to be finite. How in the world can all this work? Because he is so compressing himself and constricting himself and covering himself over. And then he's compressing himself more and constricting himself more and covering himself over more. And then again and again and again and again and again, beyond what we can imagine. Because he loves us and he wants us to be able to exist in this world. So all of this, even this inanimate and vegetation, like we're talking about planet Earth here, it's all coming from his thoughts. That's the only building block there is. So we know it's all coming from his thoughts. And his thoughts are absolutely fused with his essence and being. The Rebbe here is quoting from Maimonides, and the Rebbe has used this quote several times in Tanya. So Maimonides here is saying that by a human being, there's a person. A person possesses a faculty of intellect. And then there's something outside the person called the knowledge through your intellect, you absorb. So we've got like three discrete elements here in humans. The person, the person's brain, and the knowledge that the brain is assimilating. But the person, and for that matter, his ability to think, and for sure, of course, that knowledge are three separate things. Meaning the person, if something happened to his brain, God forbid, he could still exist as a person. If he had suddenly amnesia, God forbid, it doesn't mean that he could no longer function. He could still function as a person, even though his brain has now been altered, or God forbid, anything else that would happen to his brain, or we could talk in a positive way, how his brain became tremendously enhanced. There's still the person, and there's still his brain, and then there's a knowledge. Three separate things. And by God, and this makes no sense to us. So if it does make any sense to you, that's fine. That means you're normal. It's all one. Why does that make any sense to us? If you think about it. If you don't think about it, it sounds fine. But if you think about it, it makes no sense. Because we don't work that way. And we can't conceptualize outside the box of our own existence. Meaning, like, I keep using this term infinite. I'm using a term. Do I really understand what infinite means? Honestly, no. I mean, of course I understand what infinite means. But of course I don't. Because I am a creation within all the parameters of finite. I've never experienced, and nobody has ever experienced, infinite. So I can conceptualize infinite, I think. But on a certain level, I don't get it. If I try to make it practical, I don't get it, but I can talk about it. So similarly, I can talk about God, and I can say, oh, by me, there's a person, and I possess the ability to think, and in my brain, hopefully I have some information that I've acquired. Stuff outside of me called knowledge has gone into my brain through thinking and learning and talking and discussing and reading and being taught many things. Person, brain, knowledge. And by God, he's the knower. He's the ability to know. And he's that knowledge that is being known. And it's all one. And you're like, That doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make sense. It just doesn't make any sense to us because we're within the box where it's three separate things. But by God, it's all one. And this quote, again, this is now, it's not Hasidic thought. This is actually, the Rebbe's bringing this in from Maimonides, which is more on the revealed dimensions of Torah. But even on the revealed dimensions of Torah, we're talking about God. These are the facts. We can say the facts. We can't necessarily understand the facts. But the more we say them, the more we start thinking we understand them. And it gets a little bit, it trickles into our brain. Each time we talk about it, it trickles in a little bit more. There's, in Hasidic thought, we have two terms. Yedias Hametzias and Hasagas Hamahus. Yedias Hametzias means like knowing the facts, and Hasagas Hamahus means grasping it in essence. So when we're talking about God, and we're talking about things about God that are beyond our ken, we can have talking about the facts, and we could understand those facts, but we're never grasping the essence of those facts because it's just beyond us. In other words, in our physical world, we can know the facts and totally understand them. We can totally get it. We've experienced it. We know how to drive a car. We don't just talk about it. We don't just talk our way through it. We get what it means because we've done it, because it's part of our world's reality. When you're talking about God, you could talk, but to really get the essence of what we're saying, no, we're not going to. But that's okay, because each time as we talk about it, it gets a little more. So this quote from Maimonides that the Rebbe has used several times in Tanya, of course we're right now in chapter 48, is saying, by God, he and his thoughts are one. He is the knower, he is the ability to know, and he is that which is known. Why am I bringing this in? Because creation is that which he is knowing. He is the knower, and he has the ability to think, which is absolutely him, unlike by me. And he has the knowledge that is being thought, which is absolutely one with him, unlike by me. And the knowledge that is being thought, that is being conceptualized, that is being known, is all of creation. So therefore, all of creation is absolutely him, and yet he managed to make all of creation finite. And that's the ultimate wonder, the wow. The wow isn't that he can create, and he's God. The wow is that he can create a pen and a paper. That's wow, that's unbelievable. It's him, and it's a pen, and it's a paper. It's absolutely him. It's his thoughts, and his thoughts are totally him. And it's a pen, it's a paper. Wow. And why is he doing this to himself? Because he loves us. And he's giving us a world that we could exist in. Again, this is Maimonides' words. He is the ability to know. He is the knower. And he is the knowledge. And so to speak, with his self-awareness, Yodea kol nivraim, he knows all of creation, meaning nothing's outside of him, because he and the ability to know and the knowledge, it's all him, it's all one entity. So all of creation that he's containing in his mind's eye means all of creation is him. It's not knowledge that's outside of him like the knowledge of man. So when I'm envisioning this pen, I'm envisioning something that's not me. And even if I'm envisioning it perfectly, I'm an artist, I'm very obsessed with this pen and I want to create it, so I'm totally studying it, it's still not me. Even in my brain, it's not me. It's something outside of me that I'm envisioning in my brain. But there's nothing outside of God. Because all is knowledge of God. And all knowledge of God is him. Because all exists from his truth. All of creation, the most beautiful, the most ugly, the most holy, the most sacred, the most profane, it's all an extension of him. It all exists by virtue of his awareness of it. His awareness of it is its fabric of life. Everything. And everything I just told you is not really possible for a human to comprehend because it's not us. Now, there is a side note. Nowadays, you have endnotes. When I was growing up, we had footnotes, and the Alter Rebbe writes with side notes. And the side notes are generally more Kabbalistic, or sometimes they're answering a question. Someone who has some knowledge of Kabbalah could be wondering. So the Rebbe here puts on the side note, as Maimonides says, wrote, like the quote, he is the knower, he is the knowledge, he is the ability to know. That is a direct quote from Maimonides. And again, Maimonides is representing the revealed dimension of Torah. There's two, we could break down all of Torah into two dimensions. There are many different ways to dissect and analyze Torah. So this is probably the most classical way, is the revealed dimension of Torah and the esoteric dimension of Torah. The revealed dimension of Torah would be Chumash, the scriptures, all the commentaries, Talmud, law, all of that's the revealed dimension. And then we have the Kabbalistic dimension, the soul of Torah, the Hasidic dimension, the spiritual, mystical dimension. These are like the two bodies of knowledge. So Maimonides is in the revealed part, and the Kabbalists are in the esoteric part. So Maimonides is saying about God, he is the knower, he is the ability to know, he is the knowledge. He's saying that as one expressing the revealed dimension of Torah. The Kabbalists, who are in the, so to speak, other camp, not the camp of the body, but the camp of the soul, so to speak, they agreed with him. It's true. As is explained, as is written in the Pardes, it's called the Orchard, the Kabbalistic work of the Ramak. Ramak was Rav Moshe Cordovero. He was a very, very great Kabbalist, buried very close to the Arizal. And this is also true according to the Kabbalah, the esoteric writings of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the second greatest Kabbalist of all times. In the esoteric mystery of constriction and the garment of lights and vessels, as we explained in chapter 2. We are now in chapter 48. Let me just give you a little background what the Rebbe is saying here in this side note. Maimonides is talking about God. Now he's talking about God. Well, God is an esoteric, mystical being. God. I mean, I shouldn't use the word being. He's God. It's esoteric and mystical. True. But Maimonides, using his brilliant human brain, I can't understand the brilliance and depth of the brain of Maimonides, he's explaining, so to speak, God, and he's saying God is the ultimate embodiment of knowledge, because what's higher than knowledge? So God's the ultimate embodiment of knowledge. He's actually the knower and the ability to know, and the knowledge itself, and it's all him, and wow! Now, when Maimonides said this originally, the Kabbalists were like, excuse me? That's how you're talking about God? You're talking about God as knowledge? The wow of God is knowledge? I mean, God's a lot more than knowledge. God's God. What's knowledge to God? Knowledge is a dimension of God. Knowledge is an aspect of God. Knowledge is a creation of God. That God himself is, how could you talk about God and knowledge? Oy, 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 oy. So the Kabbalists originally were very, very upset with Maimonides. But as the Ramak, this great, great Kabbalist, the Moshe Cordovero explained, Kabbalists, it's okay. Maimonides is not talking about the ultimate essence and being of God. I mean, he's talking the revealed dimension of Torah. They can't talk about the ultimate essence and being of God in the revealed dimension of Torah. He's talking about the highest level of God in the highest world, of the spiritual worlds, which is the world of Atzilus, the world of being. The highest dimension, there is knowledge. As we say, all was created with God's wisdom. So when we're talking about the highest dimension of the highest world, that is knowledge. So on that level, what is God? God is knowledge. And being God, he's the knower of the knowledge, and he actually is the knowledge, and he actually has the ability to know the knowledge, and it's all one, and it's all him. So Moshe Cordovero sort of made peace between the Kabbalists and between Maimonides. And this was enhanced even as we're understanding with the Kabbalistic teachings of the Arizal HaKadosh, or Yitzhak Luria, which is even more intently showing how high God is beyond any of this stuff called knowledge. But still, if I'm coming down to the highest level, the highest world within the worlds that we talk about, the order of progression of the worlds of tikkun, of rectification, yes, even the Arizal would say the highest dimension is knowledge, meaning is not like secular knowledge or even religious knowledge, is God's knowledge. And God being God is it all. So he's the one knowing, and he is that which is known, and he has the ability to know. And it's all one, and it's all him. So this side note, the Alter Rebbe is bringing in, and the Alter Rebbe said, I already taught you this in chapter 2, but I know chapter 2 was 46 chapters ago. So I'm reminding you here as well, because what does it do with anything? Like, hey, none of this bothered me. But because some people that have sometimes a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. So some people that have a little bit of knowledge could say, wait, the Alter Rebbe is quoting Maimonides. And Maimonides truly said and wrote, yes, it's there. He's the one who knows. He's the ability to know. He's the knowledge. But the Kabbalists refuted this. The Kabbalists disagreed with him. So how in the world is the Alter Rebbe quoting this in Tanya and using this as part of his structure here? It's like a house of cards and you pulled out a pivotal card and the whole thing crashes. You know, how could he quote this? So in case you have a little bit of knowledge, which we don't have, so therefore we're totally safe, but in case you have just a little bit of knowledge, and therefore you're thinking, no, how could he use this quote? The Alter Rebbe is saying, relax. Yes, at one point, the Kabbalists didn't understand what Maimonides meant. They thought he was talking about God's ultimate essence and being, where we wouldn't say this. But once they understood, as it was clarified by the Ramak, the level Maimonides was talking about, everyone agrees with him. Even according to the very high explanation of God as the secrets that were uncovered that nobody knew before, that the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, uncovered the most esoteric secrets of God that nobody knew before he told them, even according to him, on the highest level of the highest world of the worlds of Hishtalshalos, the progression of order, of tikkun, of rectification, the highest level of planet Atzilus, the world of being, yes. We could speak of God as he is the knower, he is the knowledge,